Welcome back to Demystifying Self-Publishing. Today's guest is Daniel Stolfi, actor, comedian, and author of The Comedian vs. Cancer. At just 25 years old, Daniel was diagnosed with stage 3 acute non-Hodgkin's T lymphoblastic lymphoma after doctors discovered a grapefruit-sized tumor resting on his heart. What followed was a 2-year battle through aggressive chemotherapy, life-changing challenges, and an unexpected search for humor, hope, and love in the hardest moments. Instead of letting cancer define him, Daniel turned his experience into award-winning storytelling, first through his acclaimed solo show, Cancer Can't Dance Like This, and later through his memoir, The Comedian vs. Cancer. Today, we're talking about resilience, writing through trauma, and what it really takes to bring a deeply personal story to life through self-publishing. Thank you so much for being here today, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your story began in a very unexpected and life-altering way. Can you talk to us a little bit about that experience that inspired your story?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was 25 years old, this is going back to 2008, I still am, I was an actor, comedian, living in Toronto, doing my thing. And I came down with what I thought was a cold. And, being young and kind of, overly confident, I just thought, eh, you know, so I'm just like really sick. My body will take care of it. I'm young. Everything will be fine. Eventually, it got really bad. And I was like night sweats and this, that, the other. I went to a walk-in clinic and they immediately sent me to the emergency, got x-rays, this, that, the other. And they found a grapefruit-sized tumor sitting on top of my heart. And I was diagnosed with stage 3 acute non-Hodgkin's T lymphoblastic lymphoma. And it totally flipped my life upside down on its head. And I had to move back home with my parents for 2 years. I did weekly chemotherapy for 2 years, brain radiation, spinal taps. I had all of the side effects. I lost 50 pounds, my hair, everything. Like it was an awful, awful time. But as a comedian, I decided to turn that story into something positive and create a one-person show out of it. And it was called Cancer Can't Dance Like This. And it went on to tour the country for about 10 years. I performed it on stages all over the country, even in the United States. Helped raise over $100,000 from cancer-related charities. We won the Canadian Comedy Award for Best One-Person Show. So it was this absolutely life-changing, moment for me. And then it also inspired, when the pandemic happened, it inspired me to finish telling my story in a more, in a fuller way through a memoir. And I self-published my memoir through Tellwell after that in 2022. So yeah.
So let's talk about that feeling of needing to finish the story and why a book, why a memoir. You, as you mentioned, are an actor, a comedian. You turned it into this one-person show, which seems as though it would be a good fit considering that you are an actor and a comedian.
Yeah.
Where did that pivot happen to, okay, it's going to be a book?
Well, when I was first diagnosed, I had a journal. My siblings gave me a journal, and I was kind of writing out, I don't know, what was going on each day anyway. And then I started to kind of flush it out even more, but eventually I just sort of left it, and it was sitting there about 70 pages long of like this story percolating kind of thing. And I was focusing on the play. I was focusing on the show. I was focusing back on getting into acting, and I signed with my agent, and I was back in film, TV, all that kind of stuff while touring this show sporadically throughout the country. And so I don't know. I was just sort of like, the show is doing its thing. But there was a point when I went to New York to do comedy for a couple weeks, and I just sat in the New York Public Library and was like, well, let's open this memoir again and start and just see if I could just keep writing. And I wrote like 200 pages like while I was there. And then I kind of let it sit again. And then the pandemic happened. I was 10 years into doing the show. I kind of felt like the show is only 1 hour long, right? And you can only do so much. And it's really a comedy show. It's not. It doesn't tell you like what I actually went through. It's just so more about like this is cancer. It sucks, and here are the attributes I lost because of the illness, and I play those characters live on stage. Like I play my hair, I play my sex drive, I play my appetite, I play my, all these different things, and I play cancer, and they kind of get into this whole life before cancer, life after cancer, and it's a fun kind of story about what life was like before and what's like after. Whereas the memoir is more like, no, this is actually what happened, and this is what you go through, like through the medical process, through the diagnosis in the first place, finding out who I was before, relationships, how those things change, while using comedy as well, because my head was just constantly finding everything funny. So a lot of my book is in italics, and anytime it's in italics, those are my like inner thoughts going on. And that's like the comedy, that's the comedian coming out, sort of playing on what the doctor said. The doctor puts on his glasses to look at the ultrasound and said, if he's wearing glasses, this is not a good thing. You know what I mean? Like things like that. You're kind of like just finding the funny, and I was like, I don't know. I just felt like to tell my story properly, a memoir was the best way. And then if anybody's like, hey, are you still doing the show? It's like, no, I'm not. But here's a book that will tell you the whole story if you really want to, if you really want to dive in. It's a lot more revealing. It's a lot more raw. It's like, it's very tough. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. I'm so glad I did it. It's a lot. I'm so glad I did it. Yeah.
We're going to get into the amount of work that writing and self-publishing entails in a little bit. But how did writing the memoir differ from writing for the stage? I'd love to chat a little bit about that process.
Yeah, two totally different mediums for sure. The stage was more of an organic process of like, as an actor, just being like, okay, I'm gonna write for my hair. So who's my hair? And I'm coming up with this character, right? Oh, he's an Italian barber. So he's a capo capelli, and I make a he's a, I'm all like, and I'll give him a monologue, and you're kind of developing it in a more performative way. And then putting it down on the page. I would use improv. I would try to embody these different characters, use music and things like that. They're two totally different things, right? And it's a big show. There's lights. There's other technical elements that you have to consider. The memoir is like, I met with like author friends, like people who are also writing memoir. I went to classes. I took like different kind of courses and stuff about like, okay, the whole like show don't tell kind of thing in your writing. A lot of times I was just like telling what was going on, and I had to constantly be reminded by people to be like, no, you gotta really set up the scene. You really gotta bring the audience in, like, or like bring the reader in there, because like you experienced it, so in your head you're like, yeah, it's clear he was a doctor, whatever. But like, what did it smell like? What did it look like? What did it like feel like to be in those things? So it's totally different. Like you don't have to make that stuff on a theater script. Like
Right.
the smell in the air was whatever. I don't. There's no smell. We're on stage. It's like, we're live. We're in it. So, it was a totally different challenge, because I've never written like that. I write scripts like for film and TV and theater, but memoirs, and writing a book in general, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, it's a different skill set. And that's why you have editors who are like, great.
Absolutely. Was there anything that surprised you about the process of writing in terms of, the difficulty of it, or aspects or components of it that you weren't anticipating?
Oh, the amount of time it takes, and the amount of rewrites, the amount of times you're going to read I went over it hundreds of times, and then getting it ripped apart by other people too, to be like, cut your darlings, cut your baby. Like it was probably 450 pages or something like that, and then you're like cutting it down. There's chapters that I was just like, all right, well, get rid of that. And it really is a good exercise in cutting your darlings, and cutting the stuff that's just for you. Maybe it's like, oh yeah, no, this is, but this means, for me, and the reader's going like,
Yeah.
Like you can get past that and you're like, all right. So you're gonna have to like think about it in a way that's, what's the reader gonna what do they really need to know as opposed to, how you know what I mean? Like, so a lot of that was in the edit, like just like holy geez, I didn't realize the hill that was to climb. But once you're in, you're like, all right, we're doing this. You know.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that has been kind of a recurring theme is writing for the reader. And as soon as you kind of shift that perspective of, you're writing for yourself, which a memoir is deeply personal. A lot of people do write memoir for the cathartic nature of, kind of dumping everything out onto the page. So, kind of taking that shift and thinking, okay, but, does the reader need this insight? Or maybe it requires more insight, that show don't tell kind of strategy that you talked about, where, you lived it. So you're very familiar with it, but the reader is maybe not so much. Um, Humor is a very defining part of your voice. How did you decide where comedy belonged in a story that was centered around cancer and survival?
I just think comedy belongs there. So
Mm,
I'm like, I use comedy and humor to kind of get through everything. Like I I take comedy seriously, but I don't wear it seriously. You know what I mean? Like, um, someone said that before, and I was like, yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Uh, and anyway, so I know, like with cancer, like a lot of people, like my mother, I was like, I'm gonna do a show about cancer, and I'm gonna do like a memoir, and like it's not funny. Like there's no like, what are you doing? Like, don't you're gonna like this is not a good idea. But I took it as a challenge too. Like I was like, no, I think I can make this. I think I can find the humor in this because other cancer survivors that I talked to, I obviously met a lot of people along my journey, along my experience with everything, and this dark comedy kind of thing is like embedded in everyone who was going through it. Right? They tell a little joke, this, that, the other, and so I was like, okay, so there's permission here um, to do that, and I think I walked the line very finely. You know what I mean? I being very careful with the way that I walk that line. But I think when you're being honest and when you're being truthful to yourself, then the comedy comes from that, and that's you know, and that's where you can kind of get away with it. It's like, oh, this happened to me, so I'm just telling you. It's not. I'm not making fun of somebody else or somebody else's experience. It's my experience, um, and I'm finding the humor in that.
right, right.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Was there ever a moment during the process that felt more challenging to write versus live through it the first time?
That was the hard, probably one of the harder parts of writing a memoir was that I was kind of reliving all of the smells and the experiences, and they were so fresh in my mind. Like the fact that sometimes I'll reread the memoir and I'm like, man, I can't believe I remember so much detail in the that process. But those first 2 3 weeks in the hospital were really really tough. So to write about that was very difficult, but it was important for me to just to get it out and be honest. That was a big thing. I just didn't want to hold anything out of embarrassment or like whatever. I just wanted to be as honest as possible because this is all stuff that happened, and this is what people go through every day. And we just don't really think about it that way. We're always sort of just like, oh, I think they're doing okay. Yeah, they seem like they're doing okay on Instagram or whatever. They just did their 50th round of chemo and they seem all right. But it's like, but what they're going through behind the closed doors, it's like that's the real story, and that's what I wanted to write about. Yeah.
Did you ever find it challenging to overcome the vulnerability that comes with writing the memoir or choosing, what you wanted to include versus leave out? Like the way that you're expressing it is, this was reality, so I'm going to tell it like it is. But was that ever something that you struggled with deciding?
Yes. Yeah. There was definitely things that I was, again, 450 pages were written and some of it was done with like like some of it was like anger, right? And it was like just get that out on the page,
Yeah.
and then decide whether or not you're gonna like throw somebody under the bus or whatnot. When it's like, you know what, it's not worth going down that road to make, I don't know, to what, like, you know, to be
Yeah.
upset or be like whatever. So I was just like, but at least I wrote it out and I got to write that out with my own like drafts and this, that, the other. And then the difficult part was being like, okay, well, you know, you don't need to share that much about that certain
Mm.
situation or that person or that medical professional or that, you know, moment, whatever it was. So I was very that was a tough thing to do, was to try to like navigate that without offending anybody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Another Tellwell author, Elaine Alec, when I was chatting with her, she talked a lot about writing from the wound versus writing from the scar. And she said in her first draft, she was like full on writing from the wound, and it was
Yeah,
messy and it was brutal. And then revisiting and
totally.
editing, she was
Yeah.
writing from the scar and kind of talking about that journey. And I found that that was very profound to kind of think about, because I do think a lot of memoirs go through that process of, you know, dumping the hurt, dumping the anger, kind of all of those feelings and healing through that, but then maybe going through and refining after the fact.
Totally. I mean, even with my show, I think originally I was like, I'm going to do a show and it's going to be all about how crappy this is and this is the worst. And then I was like, wait, that's not going to be a good show for anybody. You know, like that's my own stuff I need to, you know, uh, deal with. And then, um, but, and, you know, still add a little bit of that stuff in there. But yeah, no, I love that analogy. That's great. Yeah.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
it's perfect. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about, because you had mentioned it was a lot of work and took a lot of time, and self-publishing does. I think, you know, it requires a lot of hat wearing. You are very much, you know, your writer, your editor, marketer, publicist, all the things. What made you choose that path, and did you consider pursuing traditional publishing?
Yes, I mean, I definitely considered pursuing traditional publishing, but you know, the reality is, I mean, for a lot of people, as much as my show was a success, and like, you know, I felt like I was coming with something to different, you know, publishing houses and whatnot. Like, if you don't have like an in some sort of way, or you're not like, this is the first of, you know, 5 books that I'm going to write. Um, it's very hard to get representation, like a lit
Mm,
agent of, you know, and then them to kind of, you know, and memoir is a tough sell if you're not, you know, Martin Short or somebody who's like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, someone who has like a lot more of a following or this, that, the other.
right.
It was, you know, cancer, you know, obviously affects millions of people. But I just was like, you know what? It's going to take too long to kind of go down this sort of road. And that's not why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to try to like sign that big book deal or anything like
Mm,
that. I'm just trying to get my story out to as many people who could, you know, potentially benefit from it. Um, and then I was like, you know, I talked to a few people and they had worked with Tellwell, and I was like, right on. Like, that's amazing. Like, oh, okay, cool. And like, I was like, I'll look into it. And I just loved this kind of middle ground thing where it wasn't quite like I'm just going to totally just do it through, you know, get it on Amazon and blah, 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 you know, and then try to whatever. Tellwell did so much of like you know, they help with the edit, the book design, the cover, the everything to make it look as professional as possible, right? And not make it feel like a self-published book, you know. And then and then, you know, doing the whole launch and all that kind of stuff. It was, I mean, it's a great of
yeah.
work, but if you strategize and you like you really think about it um as almost producing a show or producing
Mm,
a, you know, that's how I kind of looked at it. Like, okay, the release date is this, you know, we're gonna pump everything beforehand, get everybody on the emails, get everybody ready, like bump it up, and then you launch it and you try to you try to ride that wave for as long as you can, and then every once in a while, you drop in and you do stuff like this, and people ask you to speak on other things, and yeah, and yeah, so it's been a crazy journey. It is a lot of work, but I do think Tellwell takes on a lot of that burden, like a lot of that stuff that I was just like, I'm not really interested in, trying to figure out how to do all
Yeah,
the technical
totally.
stuff.
Is there a specific like marketing strategy or tactic that you found to be most successful for you in this book and the promotion?
Yeah, I mean, I hired a publicist. So that cost a little bit of money to get someone to try to get some articles in like newspapers, and I got on like breakfast television, C24. Like I got like some you know some assets that then I could use for like social media to then double down and do that kind of thing. My strategy was again to treat it like the launch of opening night of a show. Everybody I know, I'm blasting on email. Da, da, da. Also, a lot of people are in my book, right? So that starts off with that. Hey, cool if I use your name, my book. By the way, I'm launching. Da, da, da. Also, all the emails was like, hey, if you get the, I'm like, I'm no shade here, no shade, like on what I did here, but I was like, once you read it, please review it, on
Yeah.
Amazon and wherever you got, if it was Indigo, if it was Goodreads, whatever, like review it, rate it however you want, but please review it. And and then I would remind them, if
Yeah.
they got the copy of the book, oh, you got the copy of the book, thank you so much. They did a post of it. Hey, remember to just review it when you're in it. And it's a little bit like shameless promotion, self promotion, but that's what you have to do. And I'm used to kind of doing that anyway because I'm certain, an actor, and I like shows like that. So that to me is the biggest thing. Is really getting your core like friends, family, group as big of an email chain as you can get, and get that launched. Then a publicist, if you can afford it, even just to get you some stuff that you can then use for assets for like social media, and to keep that ball rolling for as long as you can, because that initial blast, even when you get okay, you launched it on Amazon. Oh, it's the number one. I was like number 15 memoir on Amazon to like Kobe Bryant and stuff for like 2 weeks or whatever. So I was
Well,
like,
and
okay,
you
that's cool.
even presently you have very impressive 5-star rating with like 90 reviews or something on
Yeah,
Amazon exclusively. Like I didn't
and
check
I
out
don't know
Goodreads, but I'm
everybody.
sure
It's
it's
not like,
similar.
yeah, and it's not like I know all these people. I know
Yeah.
a lot of them who have done these reviews, but it's not like there's some I'm like, oh, that's amazing. You just gave it 5 stars, and I don't know you. I didn't like ask you to do that, and I never asked anybody to be like, give it 5,
Yeah.
give it 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I wasn't. So that was always that was very like, okay, awesome, like. And look, and it's a good book. I think it's a great. I believe in this in the book. Um, I think it's well written. It's a fun read, a fast read. It's not fun. I don't know. Like there's like
Yeah.
ups and downs in it, but I mean it's a quick read. A lot of people they'll read it in 1 or 2 days, and they're just like I couldn't put it down. I was just reading it. I'm like, well, that's exactly the kind of book I like to read. So I'm glad that I could do that. So like yeah, there's a lot of you got to believe in your book, obviously, and shamelessly self promote it.
Totally. Well, I think, there is this misconception that once the book is published and becomes available, that that's where the work ends. And that's very much the beginning of the process. If you're not talking about your book, nobody else is. And there is something to be said about momentum, right? And kind of really continuing
Totally.
to push that. So
Yeah.
that's excellent to hear that that worked for you.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Did publishing the book change your relationship with your cancer journey? Did it open up, new conversations? Did it give you some closure around it?
You know what? I think it gave me closure is probably a really good word to use, because the show was always one of these things where, um, again, I can only say so much. I can only tell so much, and I can only do the show for so long. Getting older,
Mm,
I was 25 when I was diagnosed. I'm now 44, right? So to be like on stage telling that story is fine, but you can only reach, 200-300 people a night, however many times you're going to do the show. And the book was more just like, no, this is the real story. And it gave me closure in that sense where it's like, I don't have to perform the show, but if you want to bring me, here or there for like a guest speaker or whatever, I'll bring copies of my book. I'll I'll speak a little bit on the show and what I've done, and we'll have some laughs, and then the book is here if you want the full kind of experience. But closure was definitely like, yeah, I'm like, great. Now I have the whole story here. And I have a daughter, right? She's 5 years old. One day she's going to be able to read the book. She's not going to really be able to see me perform it. Maybe. I don't know. But in like 10 years, when she's like, because it's a pretty like out there kind of show for her to see her dad doing that kind of thing. So like, it's like eventually she'll be able to read this book, and that's amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit because we're getting into this idea of, leaving something behind, right? And like having something for your family, having something that they can kind of refer back to, your daughter can read and kind of live through that moment with you through the book. What does success look like to you for this book? Is it the sales? Is it the impact, that reader connection, or is it something else entirely?
Fully, it's the impact that it has. Success to me is when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I lent your book to XYZ because they were diagnosed last week or whatever, and they couldn't put it down. They said it was such a great, inspirational book. It really gave them hope, this, that, the other." I'm like, we're done. We're good. Like, like those are the things that you're like, that is success. It doesn't have, and no one needs to know about that. It's not like, that's for me to just be like, yeah, I can go to sleep or whatever. I don't know. Like for me, that's the success of it. Like, is if it's helping other people, awesome. If I sell 100,000 copies someday, whoa, that's amazing. But I already feel like it's been successful, and anytime I see somebody pick up a copy, I get that one or two sales a month, because that's like kind of like where I'm at now,
Yeah.
like where it's like, oh, cool. But it's be like somebody in the UK or something like,
Mm,
purchase the copy of it. I'm like, awesome. Like that's amazing. Like, though that's success. I see that
totally.
little,
Yeah.
love that
Yeah,
person.
there's
That's
no
great.
better feeling really than seeing like
Yeah.
the sales trickle in, reading the stats, where people are purchasing from. It's a
Yeah, the
very
where
cool.
people are purchasing from is a really cool one, because
Hmm.
it's not just Canada, it's the US, UK, Australia. Like Australia, I don't know anybody in Australia.
Yeah, you're like,
So
where are they
that's great.
finding it? How are they hearing about it? That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, for listeners who may be learning of you for the first time, what do you hope they take away most from your book?
Um, hope, and I mean, I never wanted to be that cancer survivor who said that, but but in all honesty, like you know, it's a crazy journey, and again, there's so many people going through it still to this day, and I'm sitting here talking about it still, like 17 years later, um, and it's still having an impact on people, and I just think that I just hope it helps people in some sort of way, gives them hope about the future of it, and that doesn't have to be like the end of the world. There is hope after it, after cancer. There's a life after it. Obviously not for everyone, but uh, and that is the reality of this illness. That's always very tough to come to terms with, because I've lost a lot of friends, through the experience, um, and yeah, I think hope is the biggest thing, is that you can come out of it with some sense of like, okay, we're gonna be okay.
I love that. And is there anything that you're working on currently? Any new books or projects that we could be expecting coming up?
Yeah, on the book front, I'm gonna take a pause on that, but there's a really cool show that I'm a part of. It's called The Sickest Roast. It's going to be on June 10th, and it's going to be at the Comedy Bar in Toronto on the East End. And basically, it's about is all these comedians from Toronto are going to roast me and my cancer on stage for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then like I'm going to then roast all of them back. So it's going to be a fun like evening of you know, roasting the illness and cancer, and it's all for a good cause. It's a charitable event, and all the proceeds are going to Sunnybrook Foundation. So
Amazing.
which is where I was treated. So yeah, cool night. Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing. If people are interested in getting tickets or attending that kind of event, can they just Google Sickest Roast Toronto? Is
Sickest
that the best
roast.
way?
Yeah. Yes, I think tickets are going on sale like May 6th. So like after, yeah, they say it's already come out. But yeah, on Instagram too. It's called The Sickest Roast. You can see catch up on it there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining, Daniel. For those listening, please be sure to like and subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, or catch the full video on YouTube. We'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thinking about self-publishing but not sure where to start? That's where Tellwell Publishing comes in. We offer assisted self-publishing services to help you bring your book to life your way. From editing and design to marketing and distribution, Tellwell's team works with you to create a book you'll be proud of while you keep creative control. From Lamar Jackson and Cindy Cherry to Kaya Usher and Rita Kakati Shah, Tellwell has helped thousands of authors publish their book with confidence. Visit tellwellpublishing.com to start your journey.